Funding for New Mexico in Focus provided by the McCune Charitable Foundation. And the Nieper Natural History Programming Fund for KNME TV. And viewers like you.
This week on New Mexico in Focus, a wild monsoon season provides a glimpse into a warmer New Mexico as new climate change research surfaces.
It seems like it's a bit of a moving target a little bit because we're facing something that we've not faced with before.
Plus, shining a light on the lack of transparency during Virgin Galactic's recent historic launch. New Mexico in Focus starts now. Thanks for joining us this week. I'm your host, Gene Grant. We've got a jam-packed show for you this week. Along with that climate change discussion in this month's Our Land, we'll also have updates on the cannabis industry, which is starting to come together. The Line panel also discusses another cabinet shakeup for Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham and the potential financial crisis looming for vulnerable New Mexicans. But up first, it's the latest resurgence of COVID-19, the Delta variant. The Line panel discusses the debate over how schools and businesses should respond to the exponential spread. But up first, insights and a plea from hospital administrators for more vaccinations.
We have a very important message today to get out to the public. That message is that vaccines are safe, they're effective, and we can prevent an increased number of deaths from COVID-19. There is still time. People can still get vaccinated. I would encourage everybody that is not vaccinated to go out and talk with their primary care doctor or find a location that can give you the shot.
Evidence shows that COVID-19 is now really a pandemic of the unvaccinated. In New Mexico, 93% of hospitalizations for COVID-19 are in the unvaccinated. In Presbyterian hospitals statewide, we're experiencing a doubling of cases every week.
Every patient with COVID-19 that is in the hospital is taking up the spot of another patient with a cancer or a stroke or some other illness that needs care. At UNM Hospital, we are seeing increasing number of COVID-19 patients, and we have been catching up with deferred care, with trauma care, and with stroke care, and our hospital has been very full for several months. This time around, we are not starting at a place where we have a lot of capacity, but we are also starting at a place where we have a very effective weapon against this virus. I think it is important for people to realize that less than 0.01% of fully vaccinated people have been hospitalized this time around.
Here at TriCore, we are seeing increasing positivity rate for COVID-19. We are also seeing increased number of tests being performed. Right now, it is critical that people who have symptoms are going to be tested so that we can prevent the spread of the virus within the community. Just want to reassure everyone that the tests that are performed at TriCore are able to effectively detect the Delta variant, and there is no cross-reactivity with other viruses that would cause any other false positive results. The tests that we are performing here are highly sensitive, they're highly specific, and they're our best way to know who may have the virus and our best way to know who needs to be isolated until they're no longer infectious to others.
When we first started seeing patients 15 months ago, there was a spread, but it tended to be people with underlying medical conditions just because it was harder for them to compensate for reacting to the infection itself. And so a little bit older, a little bit sicker with chronic conditions. And now what we're seeing is that it's the people who aren't getting vaccinated. And so that demographic tends to be younger people, not necessarily with medical problems, because maybe there's a sense that they're invincible and that COVID won't get them because it didn't get them already.
I think what this latest surge has shown us, that is, if you're not vaccinated and if you allow the virus to spread, it will mutate. And if we continue to stay unvaccinated, we are faced with the possibility of an even more dangerous mutant in the future. So the longer we stay unvaccinated, the more opportunity we are giving the virus to mutate again. And we already know that there are other mutants on the horizon that we have started to study.
This week's Line Opinion panel picks up the conversation from there. We appreciate all the time they put into each week researching the topics and sharing their insights. Back with us this week is Line regular Serge Martinez. He's a professor in the UNM Law School. Also, Line regular and former State Senator Diane Snyder. Always glad to have you into our Zoom discussion. And we welcome back Merritt Allen of Vox Optima PR. Now, first, the vaccination pleas from those hospital officials was pretty stark this week, Merritt, but do you think their stories and statistics and everything they were saying is hitting home any more than earlier vaccination messages? Is this better?
It must.
Yeah.
It must. It absolutely must.
I hear you.
This is vital. The Albuquerque Journal reported this morning that patients from Roswell, COVID patients from Roswell, are now being transported to Albuquerque because those beds are full.
Oh boy.
This is absolutely vital. We are seeing, again, patients with other conditions that require hospitalization are having to wait in the ER for a bed to open up. Mm-hmm. And I'm sick at heart because people in my own party, for cheap political, basically what they think is going to be cheap political capital and an easy win in a primary, are going to actively support people not getting vaccinated. I want to be really clear. This vaccine is not going to be made mandatory by the governor or by the president. No vaccine has been. What private employers choose to do, what a state employer chooses to do is completely different. But any individual can choose not to be vaccinated. Mm-hmm. What we are seeing in stark reports from these doctors, what we are seeing nationwide, what we've just seen from Roswell having to see patients, if you are not vaccinated, you are at risk from the Delta variant. You are taking your life in your hands, and that is your choice. Mm-hmm. But when politicians and when political influencers decide for some sort of political stunt to get a crowd response, to get a donation, for whatever political reason, that it's helpful or advantageous to support misinformation about the vaccine, I want you to take a good look at yourself and look at these hospital statistics and decide if it's worth it.
Mm-hmm. Good points there. Good points. Serge, schools, or Diane, let me go to you on this one. Schools are also now in session. Everyone's watching closely to see how this goes, no doubt about that. We've already seen a smattering of cases, Santa Fe reporting in part because younger students, of course, still aren't eligible for the vaccine. And at the same time, we're still seeing some pushback from some lawmakers and school officials to mask mandates and other restrictions. How do you think this plays out in the long play?
I think that the long play is that it ends up being nothing but disastrous for New Mexicans. I was listening, and maybe it was on the previous presentation for us, but I read, is they were talking about the similarities between tuberculosis and the situation and the contagiousness and the vaccine, and how many people, and also the distance, because as you know from our history that Taos in many areas, they developed tuberculosis centers because it was the altitude was so much better for the patient. So we have a history that we can draw on here. The thing about it is most people, unless they had someone in their family, objected to it, having a vaccine. I was reading, and it's the same objections I've heard about the COVID vaccine is, I don't know what's in there, don't know what it might do. Those are all the same things. And I wasn't old enough to remember tuberculosis, but I remember getting a smallpox shot. I still have my little scar on my shoulder. Smallpox. And I look at it and I go, okay, folks, it's a natural reaction, I guess, to oppose it. But to get into the debate of whether it's my right as a parent to determine what is happening to my child, that is true. However, as Merritt said, is you're also assuming the responsibility what the decision you make for your child is going to be a decision that impacts their classmates. So, and their instructors. I think the biggest thing I am concerned about is I've read so many different opinions. I've listened to news, and I listen to all of them to see, so I get a diverse opinion. But I think most of us don't really understand what's going on and who to believe.
That's a
what's
point.
really true
That's a
and
point.
what's not.
That goes back to Merritt's point about disinformation and everything that's going on out there. Let me swing Serge in here. Serge, you know, the education department has put itself in the center of this storm, recommending some of those restrictions and actually suspending the Floyd School Board for bucking those guidelines. Let me just ask you straight up, would it be better at this point to just go back to a public health order from the governor? I mean, her authority has been, you know, upheld by repeated challenges during the pandemic. Should we just go there again?
Well, I don't know how effective that was, you know, when it was happening either. I was
Fair point.
Traveled in southern New Mexico during the pendency of that order, and I didn't notice it making a huge difference. So, I mean, I think, you know, folks who are going to choose not to do this are going to choose not to do this. And so the source of the authority is, I think it's probably stronger coming from the governor, obviously, but, you know, folks who are brewing for a fight are gonna fight no matter what this is. And I think it is just inevitable that this is going to keep coming to a head as long as, you know, as my co-panelists have said, as long as there's, you know, disinformation and folks are stirring folks up for their own reasons. You know, it doesn't matter who the order comes from. There's going to be a lot of folks who choose not to listen to it or think it's a point worth fighting over.
Yeah. Yep. Hey, Merritt, you know, I was interested in Dr. McKee from UNM. You know, when she pointed out the longer we let a virus spread around, the higher the chance for mutations. Isn't that convincing right there? I mean, is that not enough to punch through for people?
And that's what's happened with the Delta variant. And we're seeing the impact of it. So I certainly have been vaccinated. Everyone in my family's been vaccinated. I think asking people to show that they've been vaccinated or ask them to then take a precaution, I don't know. I'm from a military family.
You know, California's gone there. Massachusetts has gone there. A lot of states have gone there.
I don't know. When I went into first grade, I was switching from public to parochial school, and I had a card that showed my shots on it. My Republican parents did not feel that this was some sort of government taking away their freedom. This was showing my kid is not going to infect other kids, so no precautions have to be taken. That's what that was. Can parents choose not to vaccinate their children? Yes. I think that's appropriate. I agree that a state mandate for school boards is probably not going to be received well, and parents will still not do it. So I think that's a hard case, but I think offering an easier way forward for parents who are willing to demonstrate my children are vaccinated, I am vaccinated. That's simply what a shot card is. That's what I had growing up. That's probably what everyone here had growing up, starting school, is here's my vaccination record.
That's right.
It's not a big deal. It's not an invasion into privacy. It's not impinging on freedom. It's just simply making a process easier.
Senator, we got about 30 seconds. Do you want to pick up on that? The idea of a vaccine passport, all that kind of thing?
I think I agree with what Merritt said. It really is. And maybe it's we older people who have experienced these things. You took your little shot card to get into school, and it wasn't a big deal. It was just part of the process. And I'm as much of a believer as anyone in the independence and having my own thoughts and values. But I have to accept that I have the responsibility of others in making my decisions.
That's right. And by the way, we still have to show immunization records to get into school. I mean, it's still going on. I'll have to wrap it up there for now. You can watch that full status update with hospital administrators on our Facebook and YouTube pages. Still ahead on the line, we'll explore the latest round of musical chairs in the Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham's administration. On this month's episode of Our Land, we check in with the National Weather Service's Daniel Porter about New Mexico's drought in this year's monsoon season. He also talks with correspondent Laura Paskus about climate change and why, when it comes to the state's water challenges, we can't just hang our hat on hoping for a better snowpack or a better monsoon next year or the year after.
Daniel Porter, thank you. Welcome. Thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
So when it comes to really alleviating drought, how much do the monsoons help versus how much does our snowpack help?
I think for the winter season, that's what we're really looking for, because we're looking in the higher elevations, we're looking for snowpack, snow accumulations that are piling up in the higher terrain, and then as you get into the spring months, that eventually slowly melts and works its way through the reservoir system, through the streams and rivers and what have you. The challenge that you face during the monsoon season, while the precipitation is certainly welcome, a lot of times it can be spotty in nature. You have the haves and have-nots, and that can happen on a daily basis, but sometimes you don't get enough precipitation during the monsoon season to help the drought situation. So what you're looking for is persistent light to moderate precipitation. You really get that during the winter season, and it impacts a larger area of the state versus in the monsoon season it can be pretty spotty at times.
And here in the Southwest, we're always paying attention to whether it's going to be El Nino or La Nina. Can you sort of just give us the brief overview of what those two different systems mean for the Southwest, and maybe what we're looking ahead to in the next few months, next 6 months?
Oh, absolutely. So El Nino and La Nina is we are focused on the central and eastern Pacific, the sea surface temperatures there. So a deviation in what we consider normal for that region. Right now we're what we call INSO-neutral. So the temperatures in the central and the eastern Pacific are near normal. And what that does is that it changes the weather patterns across the northern hemisphere. And it's really a phenomenon that we really pay attention to during the winter and spring months, because there's a little bit more of a direct correlation with weather patterns across the northern America. And with that being said, there's not a direct correlation for the next couple of months for the monsoon season. If you have an El Nino pattern going on in the eastern Pacific, you do have better chances for tropical cyclones to develop, because the waters are warmer across that area. And then if you get the right upper level pattern across the desert Southwest, that could tug some of that moisture northward into the desert Southwest. So that it could be one small correlation we see with El Nino during the monsoon season. But across the winter and spring months, what we're looking for is El Nino across our region, because that tugs the storm track further towards the south into the desert Southwest. And as you have more storms move through the region, you have greater chances for precipitation. And so it tilts your odds a little bit more in favor of more of a near to above normal season. What we are looking at right now for this upcoming 2021-2022 winter season is the numerical models have come into some sort of agreement that we might be faced with another round of La Nina conditions. And usually for New Mexico, the storm track's too far north, and that reduces the opportunity for storms to move through the region. And so generally in that pattern, we see below normal precipitation and above normal temperatures. That's not to say storms won't come through the region and they won't be impactful to New Mexico. We still get significant winter storms that move through the region during that time, and we need to be prepared for those type of scenarios. But the frequency of those events are probably going to be fewer than when we're in neutral or El Nino. And just kind of an interesting stat that I kind of looked at before we came on the show here is when we do the double dip into La Nina, so we had a La Nina, we've kind of come out of it, and it's now forecast to go back into La Nina. those are historically terrible seasons for New Mexico. We are usually below normal in the precipitation department. So we kind of need to keep our fingers crossed that the La Nina that is forecast to occur in the coming months in the fall and the winter season isn't going to be as severe as in past.
So right now, looking around the state, like much of the state is in drought conditions. We're seeing our rivers low and drying, our reservoirs are low. So we should not be thinking like, oh, let's just keep our fingers crossed for a good snowpack and next year we'll be okay.
Yeah, absolutely. It looks like we really need to hang our hat a little bit on this monsoon season and hope we get quite a bit of precipitation during the season and we can capture some of that water that we're receiving during the next couple of months. But as we go into the winter and into the spring months, it looks like we might not see as much snowpack in the higher elevations, and that will certainly translate to a challenging spring for 2022 because it could intensify the drought situation. The fuels across the region will continue to dry out. And then once we get those westerlies that we're all so familiar with in New Mexico, when the winds really start to pick up and the humidities drop off and we've already got drought, that's a recipe for extreme fire behavior. And that would be something we'll be monitoring very closely next spring.
So one of the things that we know about our changing climate is we'll continue to see a rise in temperatures. When it comes to precipitation, however, or the future of the monsoon season, what do we know about those changes into the future? Yeah,
the North American monsoon is already a complicated and not fully well understood system that impacts the western United States. Now you add climate change into the equation where temperatures are warming, that kind of takes things out of balance a little bit. And so it becomes even more challenging to predict what future monsoon seasons across the desert Southwest may be faced with. But as you have a warming climate, temperatures continue to warm, the droughts continue to become more severe, the region becomes much more arid and what have you. There is some modeling out there that suggests that as well as the temperatures warm, there's an opportunity for more water vapor to be available in the atmosphere. And so when you do get a storm that does impact your region, you get the right weather pattern to set up across your region, they could be more intense in nature because there's more water vapor available for storms to work with in the atmosphere. And so it's kind of a double-edged sword a little bit. When you have the severe droughts that do develop, but then when you do have storm systems move through, they could be heavy rainfall producers. And so you're faced with drought, and then you're also faced with the flash flood risks that come with those heavy thunderstorms.
Right. So speaking of that, you know, these storms that we saw like in Doña Ana County or that caused flooding in Belen or Carlsbad, are these considered extreme weather events, or kind of how do they fit into that narrative?
So, you know, for the monsoon season, we always face the risk for flash flooding, and it's always amplified as well when you have wildfire burn scars, urban development, and what have you. And so those challenges have always been there, and they will continue to be an issue going forward. Whether or not we can pinpoint specific events as to whether or not it's related to climate change is very difficult to ascertain. But I would say that the risk for those heavy rainfall events moving forward, the frequency of those are most likely going to increase as we continue to have a warming climate.
So one of the things that we've talked about on this show before is how our warming climate kind of sets us up to not always have a sense of normal, that there can be dry periods, there can be very wet periods. It's sort of can be very unpredictable. And I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about that in terms of how we can anticipate what our weather patterns will be like as we have a changing climate.
That's an interesting question, and one that many of us may not necessarily know the answers to, because we are looking at numerical models now and we see the patterns that we anticipate for the upcoming season, but then maybe they don't pan out? Is it because of the poor model performance, or is it because of a changing climate across the region? So it seems like it's a bit of a moving target a little bit, because we're facing something that we've not faced with before in the most recent years, decades, and centuries. So,
Daniel, thank you so much for joining me today.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me here.
It was a month ago this week that Richard Branson and Virgin Galactic made a historic space flight, launching from Spaceport America in southern New Mexico. Many of you may have watched Virgin's live stream, but there were plenty of local journalists there covering the story as well. Unfortunately, as Kevin Robinson Avila of the Albuquerque Journal documented this week, the access for local media was less than ideal. Correspondent Megan Kamerick caught up with him this week on Zoom to find out why that lack of transparency is so discouraging.
Kevin, you have been covering Spaceport America and Virgin Galactic for years. I think a lot of folks probably see this as billionaires playing at being astronauts and selling seats to rich people. Why is it more than that?
Well, the very visible part of what Virgin Galactic is doing that the whole world is seeing and following is to a large extent that they're flying wealthy people who could afford, at this point, tickets of $450,000 a seat to start to space, or the promise that they'll start doing that next year and actually build up spaceports in other places around the world to do it all over. And that really, I mean, unless in 30, 40 years or 20 years, the price comes down to open it up to more people at a price that more people can afford, it really is an exclusive business model for people who are elite, who can afford it, who have the income. But that's the most visible part of what Virgin Galactic is doing. The technology they've developed has created other businesses that contribute not just to, well, contribute to critical development for society and humanity in space. One business, for example, to fly using the same technology, rockets part of the way to space that carry satellites, and then shoot them into space the way they do passengers on the other adventure business that they have, at a much cheaper price to get those satellites up there. And satellites are critical for everything going forward for society.
So why is this industry important for New Mexico's economy?
Well, even the adventure part of it, for the people who can afford it, is a huge impact on New Mexico's economy. There's already nearly 250 people working regularly at the spaceport, with a huge impact on the local economy down there. A Moss Adams accounting firm study of what they could expect once Virgin Galactic stops operating regularly is $1 billion in accumulated impact in southern New Mexico just by 2025. Apart from that, you have all the other employment opportunities and businesses that are built up through the tourism that it brings. The flight of Branson brought some 500 to 700 people into Las Cruces, hotels filled, and true to consequences as well. And when they're flying 2-3 times a week, that becomes a regular phenomenon with a great deal of economic impact.
Now, all that being said, let's talk about your experience actually covering Richard Branson's flight to space last month. Officials made it really difficult for you all to do your job. How?
Well, Virgin Galactic basically live streamed the entire thing on YouTube for real-time web coverage of what it was doing. But that was all Virgin Galactic company covering its own event and streaming that live to the world. They invited journalists from all over, including me. People came in from Europe and Asia and every place else. But when we got to the spaceport, they herded us all into a specially designated area, totally separated from the 500 or so guests that were there to view the whole thing and be a part of the historic event. And what was incredibly surprising is they kept the press from leaving that area to interview anybody. We're down there to interview people, bring the thing to life through what we write and what we photograph, talk to all the people walking around. We couldn't do any of it because security guards kept us from leaving our specially designated area. When we tried to, they herded us back. They wouldn't let us.
So let's be clear, this is not you as a journalist whining that you couldn't get the story you wanted. Why should we be concerned? There was very clearly a coordinated effort to control access on this story.
Because as Virgin Galactic portrays it to the world, they're trying to democratize space. It's been limited to what I think the number is I forget what the number of astronauts that have actually flown on government flights from the US and elsewhere to space. This opens up, as they say, to humanity for your everyday person to go up to space and make space something that everybody can share in and be a part of, democratize it in that sense. Well, we already know the business model limits how many people can actually do that, as we started out discussing. But at least for the world to share in ways that are direct in the experience through people like me, through media, through reporters, through people covering it, through, that kind of democratization to share the experience is what makes it what Virgin Galactic wants to be. If they limit that, restrict it, and not allow that independent coverage of it, then all you're getting are company images and sound bites and anything they want to show and present to the world. And that becomes a marketing promotional tool. That's not reporting on what's going on. That's not what reporters do.
Kevin Robinson Avila with the Albuquerque Journal, thank you so much for talking with us.
Thank you for interviewing me. Appreciate it.
The revolving door apparently keeps spinning in Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham's cabinet. Recently, she announced new leadership in the Education and Public Safety departments. Now comes word that Children, Youth, and Family Secretary Brian Blaylock is stepping down this month. Mr. Blaylock, you might remember, has faced criticism for spearheading the use of temporary messaging service called Signal to conduct public business. Mr. Blaylock says he is leaving to follow his wife in a new career opportunity for her in California. But the bigger question here is this just normal turnover for high-stress jobs during a difficult time? Or, Senator, should we be worried there is something else going on here with all this turnover?
I would be a little concerned about the turnover, what I consider high turnover in the other departments. In CYFD, I'm sorry, it has been a revolving door as long as I can remember. I started in the legislature in January 2001. It was an issue then. We went through, and this has been an issue regardless of which party was in the exact control of the executive. So I don't think we can say that it's any more. I'd have to go back and count all the numbers, but I don't think it's any higher than it was over the last few years. But I think we do have a right to be concerned about what CYFD is doing. I do think that, and in leaving to support your spouse sounds a little strange to me, but then so does pursue other opportunities, which we hear frequently. But Justice Barbara Vigil, the public may not know or may not have noticed in the article, was a former children's court judge. So she has a lot of, for about 10 years or so, she has a lot of experience in dealing with children and their parents and their care and having to make decisions about those. I have to tell you what I think should happen, and this is just me, with her in place. I think she's outstanding. And as an attorney and as a former judge, she reminds me much of the Solomon kind of situation. She fits that image to me. We should get an outside entity, someplace in the United States, to come in and evaluate this department. Now, we've had this department and that department, and please don't get me wrong, I think David Abbey and the LFC and his staff are excellent in doing evaluations. But I think we need someone that has no connections to New Mexico, come in and do the evaluation. We've tried separating the entities. We've tried creating a new department. We've changed secretaries, as we've talked about.
That's right.
But I want to know what we
It's not a bad idea. Yeah, it's not a bad idea. Merritt, the state now faces a whistleblower lawsuit from two former CYFD employees who claimed they were fired for bringing those concerns about Signal to light, as uncovered by Searchlight New Mexico in a series of reports, by the way. Is a fresh start the best thing for CYFD, given that cloud of scandal?
Yes. Well, yeah, I mean,
I like that.
Yes, I mean, it's almost it has to be blown up and started over. I feel like for any gubernatorial candidate at this point for 2022, you could ignore any other issue and say, I pledge I will make CYFD a functional, effective agency, and that could win the election. It could be a single issue. It could be a single issue campaign. And I think to Diane's point, One thing about bringing Justice Vigil in, you know, other state child welfare agencies have had to go under federal receivership.
Yep.
And certainly Justice Vigil would know how to make that transition and administer that. And that may be the only way forward at this point, because I think
that's a fascinating idea. That's a fascinating idea, Mary. I had not heard that proposed before. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm. I think it's very clear that this administration sees CYFD as a liability to not be managed effectively, but to be kept out of the news.
Gotcha.
And this is damage control only. Mm-hmm. And until we have a governor who is really willing to make CYFD function for the welfare of New Mexico families and children, perhaps to Diane's point, outside oversight is the only way forward.
Mm-hmm. Professor, I got a question here. We also know who will be leading CYFD. Senator mentioned in the short term will be interim, but the newly retired Supreme Court Justice Barbara Vigil will take the helm, as we just heard. Justice Vigil's experience in this area as a head of the state's children's court, as Merritt mentioned. Do you think she will be a good fit here? Because what Merritt's proposing is someone to come in and basically clean house. I mean, she's got a lot of experience, but is this the person to clean house, so to speak?
I think, Justice Vigil is incredibly respected among the bar and folks, who have interacted with her, throughout her career. She has vast experience in not just being an attorney and being a judge, but in some of the administrative aspects of running the state, the courts in the state of New Mexico, serving as the Chief Justice. And she's, there's not a hint of scandal about her. She's going to be a solid head of this agency. I think she's more than up to the task. I certainly don't envy her. This task. I mean, this is probably one of the hardest jobs in any state government to be in charge of CYFD, right? As Merritt was saying, the governor wants us to stay out of the news. Well, that's what we all want, because CYFD makes the news when things go catastrophically wrong.
That's true.
Right. And so threading that, finding that line of doing what the agency does, of protecting children while also trying to respect the rights of parents throughout the state of New Mexico, and also do it efficiently and effectively with the budgetary and other administrative restraints. This is an unbelievably challenging task. I think Justice Vigil is a fantastic choice for it, but like I said, I don't envy her, that's for sure.
Merritt, is a $100 million budget at CYFD, $100 million. And they're asked to do a lot of things. I've got to wonder if they're being asked to do too many things.
I think.
Go ahead, Merritt.
No, I didn't know. I didn't quite hear. I think that's certainly. I think that's certainly fair. They're understaffed. They have pay issues. I know in 2016, starting salary for a child advocate was $15 an hour, and that was for a degreed child advocate.
Wow. That's not going to work.
They have issues with middle management being somewhat entrenched and risk averse. There's a tremendous issue. Secretary Blaylock came in with a completely new approach, which was keeping families together. And so that was a complete change of culture from what had previously been. I think you don't change a culture with a completely new mindset overnight. So that is certainly true. We don't have enough foster parents. So often children go out of state, and the child advocates who often have double the caseload that they're supposed to.
That's right.
Also, so they're supposed to visit every child in their dossier once a month. Also, sometimes they're supposed to travel out of state.
That's right.
So
change is hard. My old boss.
people.
My old boss, Heather Wilson, when she was head of CYFD under Gary Johnson, she had a heck of a time just trying to make an inch worth of change. It's a very difficult situation. That's all the time we have for that discussion. Up next, the looming threat of evictions and utility shutoffs. Right now, we turn to New Mexico's cannabis industry. The state will begin accepting applications for production licenses in just a few weeks, but the rules are still being finalized, and the Cannabis Regulatory Advisory Committee was just appointed. The Growing Forward podcast team recently spoke to Regulation and Licensing Superintendent Linda Trujillo about how all of that is shaping up as we speed ahead to legal sales by April of next year.
Thanks so much for joining us again, Superintendent.
Hi, Andy. It's always nice to be on here. It's good to see you too, Megan.
Since the last time we spoke, your department has held 2 public rulemaking hearings and made some changes to the proposed rules for cannabis growers. And there's a statutory deadline to start accepting cannabis license applications by September 1st, which is dependent on finalized rules. So how is RLD doing in terms of meeting that deadline?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And we are going to slide under it just in the nick of time. You know, we're dividing up and conquering how we look at the public comments, add the public comments in, make changes to the rules. We would have liked to have been, you know, to be able to file the last bunch of rules, but it was pretty clear that there was enough substantive issues that we weren't going to be able to consider it what's called legally a logical outgrowth of any changes. This time, there's not those kinds of substantive changes. I'll just give you an example. One comment that was raised a couple of times in the public hearing as well as in comments was to extend the provisional license from 3 months to a year. And so what we're proposing is to extend it to 6 months with an opportunity to, in writing, to extend it for another 6 months. And remember, now we're having our first Cannabis Regulatory Advisory Committee. And so when I say proposed, you know, they're going to be looking at them and they'll be taking into consideration the drafts that we made based upon our research, and then whatever changes we've made based upon the public comments. They'll also have access to all the public comments. So our hope is that they'll give us a thumbs up for, if not all, the majority of the rules that we need to file, and then we'll move forward with that.
Superintendent, I noticed there were a couple of people appointed to the Cannabis Regulatory Advisory Committee that were not, or I didn't see them listed as applicants, namely Pueblo of San Ildefonso Governor Perry Martinez and medical cannabis patient Nathan Paulinelli. I know there were some positions like representatives of law enforcement, the Public Defender's Office, and District Attorney Association that had to be appointed by those certain organizations. But can you explain why there would be appointed members that maybe didn't apply in that initial application process?
Absolutely, Andy. That's a really good question too. When we asked for the applications for the Cannabis Regulatory Advisory Committee, we knew that we would potentially get some applicants. We weren't sure that we would get enough applicants. We got a lot of applicants in the long run, but we also talked to other stakeholders outside of that application process to make sure that we were having voices that were heard. And a couple of the stakeholders that we communicated with is giving the tribes, pueblos, and reservations an opportunity to submit. And so that was like in addition. In fact, one of the things that we had talked about early on is maybe not even put that position on as looking for applicants, but we decided, you know what, we're going to go even above that. So we put it on the list looking for potential applicants for that position. But we also talked to outside interested parties. And the name that ultimately was chosen was a recommendation, I believe from Picaris Pueblo, I believe, was the one who recommended it, and it was a very good recommendation. And so, after talking with stakeholders, that was how that decision was made. But it wasn't, you know, appointing people was not limited to the people that were going to apply for it. That was just one way that we were looking for potential candidates.
The city of Albuquerque adopted zoning requirements for cannabis businesses several weeks ago, and now officials with Chavez County, which includes Roswell, are considering some restrictions that might include hours of operation and no sales on Sunday. And then in addition to that, there was talks in Santa Fe County of limiting personal grows to indoor only. Can you explain where RLD's jurisdiction ends when it comes to this local control issue?
Yeah, we actually don't have jurisdiction over those things that you're talking about. So to the extent that a local jurisdiction can determine time, place, and manner restrictions, that is completely within their jurisdiction. And originally we thought that the location to schools and daycare was within our jurisdiction. We got legal counsel that it was not. It is limited to the local jurisdiction. And so that will not be in our ultimately adopted rules. Any reference to location is going to be limited to the local jurisdiction. Now, whether it falls within the guidelines of what the statute allows a local jurisdiction to determine is ultimately going to be determined by the courts. But it's not within our power to make those kinds of restrictions or to enforce it.
Thank you, Superintendent, for talking.
Thank you. I always enjoy coming and talking with you guys. I love the questions that come up. Believe it or not, the questions that come up and the comments that I hear from the public really do help form the directions that we're going and how we look at licensing and how we look at regulation. It's really incredibly important. So thank you for letting me come on again.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Season 3 of Growing Forward, a collaboration with New Mexico Political Report, is underway right now. You can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Check it out. Time to wrap things up for this week with our Line Opinion panel with a discussion about whether or not a major financial crisis is looming in New Mexico. The state's eviction moratorium is still in place, but as Searchlight New Mexico recently reported, that hasn't stopped some landlords from filing thousands of eviction notices during the pandemic. And this week marked the cutoff for a moratorium on utility shutoffs for New Mexicans behind on payments. There are relief programs out there, but Serge, as you know from your work in this area, it will not be enough. And I just have to ask you, how are these evictions even happening when there's a moratorium in place? Is this illegal? What's going on here?
There are a lot of evictions happening. Most of them are landlords who have figured out that the stay imposed by the New Mexico Supreme Court or the CDC moratorium only applied to a limited subset of evictions, and those are for non-payment of rent. Mm-hmm. So, at this point, a year and a half in, people have figured out there's lots of ways to remove tenants. And so because of the limited nature of this stay, right, what we're seeing is evictions happening even when we are giving lip service to the public policy goal of keeping people from moving around during the pandemic and being dislocated from their homes. So it's not a loophole. It's functioning exactly as planned and anticipated, and as many of us said would happen, and it is happening, right? The stay it's not the complete blanket protection that a lot of folks like to think it is. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Merritt, is it too early to think about lifting these moratoriums? Are we just putting off the inevitable without dealing, with the underlying issues at stake here?
Well, I kind of feel like there are so many programs in place that aren't talking to each other, because one thing I've been looking at is renthelpnm.org, mm-hmm. which is a pretty good site. As of August, and I'm reading the banner right now, as of August 12th, 2021, we have issued 10,237 awards totaling $26,797,000. This is a really good website that the state offers, offering federal grants for people needing help with rent and utilities. And there's a whole site for landlords so that they can steer their tenants that way to get grants, to get paid. So it also, it's showing that the state understands landlords kind of need this too, to keep landlords from going under. So there are some kind of robust programs in place to kind of keep this going, because landlords can't go without rent forever either.
That's right.
Particularly in Albuquerque, where our housing market, single home market is kind of skyrocketing, which is going to create a housing equality problem if we don't have one already. I think it's a difficult program to keep an eye on, because we have federal cash flooding in. We've just gotten the infrastructure bill passed this week, well, by the Senate. It's got to go to the House, get through the House. The uncertainty of the pandemic continues, kind of pointing to our first segment this week. So I think there's help out there. I think to say it's too early, I can't agree with that statement. At some point, we've got to attempt to go back to morality. Well, that's also a good idea too. Well. Normality. That's a good Spoonerism, Merritt. Normality and morality. I'm for both.
I love it.
So yeah, I'm not ready to say it's too soon. I kind of feel like we've used 27,000 of 170 million of federal aid. I kind of feel like
I hear you. We've spent just over 20 million out of the 284 million available. And that money's going to go away, Senator, at the end of September, unless we start spending a whole lot more. And Mert mentions, we have a pretty decent website for people to get help. How do we get people to the website, first of all? That's the biggest part, to take advantage of some of this money.
Well, one quick, obvious answer is public service announcements. And maybe this is something our media everywhere, television to cable to newspapers, whatever, could run like a public service announcement. I think this is certainly something that's impacting all of the public, not just the renters. One of the comments and stuff that I've read about is that some of the money that's been given out to the applicant, the renter, is not then getting to the owner of the facility. So, and that it's being spent for other things. And I'm not saying this is a big problem or not a problem, but there is enough of that issue out in perception that our owners are very concerned about whether the monies will get to them eventually. And you're right, that's a lot of money we're talking about, and people should apply. All we can do is keep pounding on it.
That's right.
To do it, and then hope that it gets where it's supposed to go.
Let me get Serge in here, of course. And Serge, a June report from the LFC, I have to say it again, if New Mexico does not spend a third of that $284 million by the end of September, we could lose millions in badly needed aid. Touch on this, if you would, everything you've heard here. What needs to happen next?
Yeah, I'm hearing the same things. I talk about the emergency rental assistance money, every day as much as I can to whoever I'll talk to. And I am constantly surprised that people are surprised when I tell them that this money is available.
Right.
And when they do apply, the website, as Merritt said, is pretty good. It's pretty functional, easy to do. There's a waiting period of a few weeks that is slowing some of this down. And there's also a spot for landlords to apply for this, for landlords to say, my tenants, and we talk about people, individual tenants may not know about this money being available. Landlords know about this money.
That's right.
Right.
Hey, Serge, let me ask you something else here. In the work you do, 91% of evicted renters in Albuquerque did not have legal representation. The research shows. How do we fix that? How do we get renters better representation in these situations?
There are places that have made it used, funds to pay for lawyers for everybody who's facing eviction, and they've seen outcomes that keep people from getting evicted. It's not, the courts, the eviction courts are designed with the idea of being accessible to people who don't have lawyers. In practice, it's bewildering and overwhelming in a lot of cases. But there are two answers, I guess. One is more money for lawyers, right? But that's a bit self-serving. The other is reduce the number of folks who are facing eviction. And by encouraging, for example, right now, say, look, as a landlord, if you want to evict somebody for non-payment, first you need to talk to the ERAP people, the rent help people, and see if you can get that money. If there's a reason that you can't get paid, right, then we can talk about that. slowing things down to allow folks to be able to try to get that money would significantly reduce the folks who are in court, which would reduce the number of folks who don't have access to lawyers. So you can come at it from either way. But it's true, it's a real issue, right? As a lawyer, obviously, I believe everybody deserves to have the benefit of someone who's trained in the law and who's not going to be overwhelmed by the court.
That's right. And as you've made the point many times here, Professor, these folks are going out the door with an eviction on their record, which makes their life very, very difficult down the road. So that's a wrap for this week's Line Panel. Thanks again for all your efforts. Be sure to keep up with the conversation with us this week on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Earlier this week, I had the opportunity to talk in depth with our environment correspondent Laura Paskus on the new report from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change and their fairly startling results. And as you heard earlier, in our land, we are right in the middle of it. In the report, I was particularly struck at what the upcoming century might portend for the Rocky Mountain Range and projections of earlier onset spring snowmelt and changes to stream flow in low elevation mountain catchments. The scariest bit out of all of this is there's just going to be less snow. This will pose a number of challenges going forward for our state, which the report also touches on. We're talking threats to energy production, ecosystems integrity, agricultural and forestry production, disaster preparedness, and ecotourism. On that last note, think about what that means for our ski industry alone. Now, we have a choice to make. Each of us as individuals, we can let the extreme end of climate change predictions paralyze us, or allow it to motivate us to take individual action, if for no other reason outside of family, for our beautiful state. Thanks again for joining us and for staying informed and engaged. We'll see you again next week in Focus.
Funding for New Mexico in Focus provided by the McCune Charitable Foundation and the Nieper Natural History Programming Fund for KNME-TV. And viewers like you.